A decade ago, Tavis Smiley wrote the book, The Covenant with Black America. It was an expansive agenda for African Americans written before the age of Barack Obama. Now, Mr. Smiley is out with a new book, The Covenant with Black America, 10 years later. This week, while we were traveling in Iowa, we spoke with Mr. Smiley about what's changed over the last decade. As Martin Luther King Day approaches on Monday, we started by talking about what areas, if any, are better for Black America now than they were before Barack Obama took office.
I'm sad to report that in every single leading economic category, Black America has lost ground over the last decade. In every major economic category, we've lost ground. So this book comes out, as you said, in 2006. So clearly, this book was out before Obama shows up to win in 2008. So the book was never about Barack Obama then. This 10-year update is not about him now. But it is true that over these last 10 years, most of that on his watch, Black America has lost ground in the major economic indicator categories.
What accounts for the fact that that so little progress, or indeed the backsliding, what accounts for that going on under the leadership of the first African-American president? How do we explain that? Yeah,
I think there are a few things. And to your question, how do we explain it? I don't know. I think the historians are going to have a very difficult time trying to juxtapose how, in the era of the first Black president, the bottom fell out for Black America. That's going to be a hard juxtaposition to make. I hope to be around to read what their account is for why they think that happened. But my research in this text suggests a few things in no particular order. Number one, there was too much deference to the president by Black people. We got so caught up in the symbolism that we didn't press hard enough on the substance. And so symbolism does matter. I just think substance matters as well. And so there was too much deference in some part to the president on the part of Black people. Black leaders were sidelined and silenced too often in favor of an invitation to the White House. And so more could have been done in terms of pressing an agenda. You look at the gay and lesbian community, look at the environmental movement. Of course, Wall Street gets everything they want, but look at what other communities gained over the last decade, and look how Black America wasn't just stagnant, but indeed lost ground over the last 10 years, in part, one, because we were too deferential. Number two, clearly there was indifference. There's no doubt about the fact that this president received the kind of headwind that no president has ever received. There was clearly obstructionism, so that's a factor as well. But the third factor, I think, I would put as a question. I think, again, historians would debate this for years to come. Did Barack Obama not get enough done on Black issues because he was obstructed, or did he not try hard enough? Did he not do enough? And I think the answer is clearly both. We'll see whether historians come down on that. But this book, again, is not about him per se. It's about where Black America is 10 years after that text. And again, it's just not a happy report. There are pockets of progress, but across the board, we've regressed.
Tavis, I want to ask you about the president. I know you said the book's not about him, but think of him not as the president, but as someone who cares passionately about the same issues you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Do you think when he reads your book, I'm assuming he will, that he'll agree with your conclusions, or do you think he'll take issue with them and see his legacy in a different way? Well,
that's a good question, Mark. I think, number one, it's hard to argue with the data. This is not a book that I wrote and espouse my particular point of view. There'll be plenty of books written about whether Barack Obama measured up or didn't measure up where Black issues were concerned. I just saw a book come across my desk the other day. I think it's The Black Presidency by Michael Eric Dyson is out in Black History Month in February. That's the first of many. I might even write one myself, who knows, about what he did or didn't do vis-a-vis Black issues. But this book, again, is about the issues. And so I think when he reads it, to answer your question, Mark, if he wants to argue with the data, then so be it. But this book is data-based. Indiana University, the School of Public and Environmental Affairs, the academics there, the professors there who are trained in these disciplines wrote the book. They wrote the research, did the research rather, and wrote these 10 updated chapter segments on where we are 10 years later. So you can argue with me, but I'm not the guy who pulled the data. You can argue with the data, and I think you're not going to be very successful at that.
Give me your sense of whether the Black Lives Matter movement matters. Sure. Is that going to be an Occupy Wall Street that kind of flares up and then disappears, leaving no real trace? Or is that, you think, going to be something that could be significant in the short, medium, and long term?
One of the issues that we can make progress on in this election year and beyond, in a bipartisan way, I might add, is criminal justice reform. As you both know, you study these issues as much as I do. In Washington, there is already talk and there's communication, there's bipartisan consensus already on some meaningful criminal justice reforms, which I look forward to. And I think that can happen if we demand that all voters in this election season. That's something that we can see a bipartisan progress on. To your question specifically about Black Lives Matter, they deserve great credit. They deserve great credit for the agenda that they have raised, for the issues they've put on that agenda. And I think that movements are very rare. I'm always careful to declare something a movement. It starts with, how might I put this, a moment. A moment builds momentum, and out of momentum, you can get a movement. But movements are very, very rare in our society. But it starts with moment, momentum, and then movement. They've made a significant impact on the conversation in this country. Whether or not it's a sustainable movement, we shall see. But I am so heartened by these young people who understand that after living lives for whatever, however long they've been living, so many young people here, but this generation has been politically marginalized, they've been economically exploited, they've been socially manipulated, and I'm glad to see that they are finally straightening their backs up. If I can quote Dr. King and Malcolm X and a few others, a man can only ride your back when it's bent. Once you straighten your back up, something has to happen. These young folk are straightening up their backs, and I think their impact is going to be not just appreciable, but lasting.
We don't know who the next president's going to be. It's not that likely to be an African American after 8 years of Barack Obama.
You got that
Where
right.
does Black America go from here?
Yeah.
where does unless Ben Carson surprises us all?
Yeah.
So just in an open-ended way,
yeah.
Where does Black America go from here?
As we approach the King holiday, John, that is the penultimate question. King wrote a book called Where Do We Go From Here? And that is still the question all these years later. I think it starts with recognizing again what the data tell us. I'm so over people like Donald Trump who speak off the cuff and have no regard for facts, have no regard for real data. So we have to start by paying attention to what the data is telling us. And the data, again, is telling us that Black America has lost ground in every major economic category over the last 10 years. And if we care about the sanctity and the humanity and the dignity of those lives, and for that matter, all lives in this country, we got to take these issues seriously. Why do I say all lives? Because these issues may be Black America's problem, but they're white America's burden. And I believe when you make Black America better, you make all of America better. So where we head is to the facts, to the data first, to see what they tell us, and then to start making demands. As I said earlier in this conversation, we did not make enough demands over the last 10 years. Other communities did. You have not because you ask not. To the victor goes the spoils. You can't be the most loyal constituency of this or any president and not see some progress made during that tenure. So let's start with the facts, and then let's start making some demands. You got to agitate if you want the system to do anything for you.